Okay, so just to refresh from our talk yesterday, why, according to this philosophy and these teachings, why we experience unsatisfactoriness or suffering or dukkha. So the cause, the second noble truth, the first noble truth, that there is dukkha. The second noble truth is the origin of that suffering or that dissatisfaction. And the origin or cause of that suffering is referred to as tanha. So tanha, the literal translation is thirsting, but it's often translated as well as craving or desire, attachment. But it's the thirsting of the mind to experience pleasure and to push away displeasure, to feel comfortable at all times. And what is a sense of comfort, a sense of security, when we are born into a world governed by ephemeral conditions? Our minds are constantly seeking to find some sort of semblance of control. This is understandable. As I talked about yesterday, all living things are engaging in this type of action or behavior. So we can't judge, even though we might judge the mind for doing this. This is a very understandable behavior from a survival perspective. The only thing is now for most of us, we're not driven or governed by those same environmentally driven scenarios like saber-toothed cat outside the yurt. And yet our minds are still, by and large, especially when we're kind of on autopilot and engaging in behaviors as a result of past conditions and habitual patterns of behavior, we're still engaging in that limited way of seeing the world that we need to create security. So that is the cause of our suffering, is this tanha, and tanha gives rise to two of the three what are considered the primary defilements of the mind. I think Thich Nhat Hanh calls them the three poisons, sometimes referred to as the fires, the kilesas. The word kilesa is the Pali word. The Sanskrit word is klesha, from the root klish, which means to torment. So there's many of them, but the three primary ones are lobha, dosa, and moha. Moha is delusion. We're going to look at that tomorrow. Lobha and dosa is what arises as a result of tanha. So because of this seemingly permanency of tanha at times, when I experience something that's unpleasant, whether that's an uncomfortable sensation in my body or an unpleasant mind state like fear, dosa arises, and dosa is the aversion, the ill will, sometimes translated as hatred, that arises to push away unpleasant experiences because they feel threatening, and they threaten our sense of security or pseudo-security. The flip side of that is referred to as lobha, sometimes translated as greed, attachment as well, love, but not the unconditional love that we might hope for ourselves and with others. But I think the example I used yesterday, as in I love ice cream, or I love this object, an infatuation with it because it makes me feel good. Okay, and so where do lobha and dosa arise? Where do they enter our experience? The Buddha says at the sense doors. So lobha and dosa, and moha as well, but we'll leave moha. Lobha and dosa arise at the sense doors. So sight contacts the eye, or the eye contacts the sight. If it's pleasurable, if it's something I like to look at based on my conditioning, what does it give rise to? Lobha. If it's an unpleasant sight, dosa. Pleasant sound, lobha, give me more. Unpleasant sound, dosa, give me less. Pleasant thought, give me more lobha. Unpleasant, give me less dosa. Does that make sense to everyone? Mm-hmm. Okay. And not only in exhausting existence, being drawn on these extremes from one end to the other, pleasant to unpleasant, the mind trying to bend things to its liking, but using the analogy of Ajahn Chah's of a cobra, both bite. Unpleasant experiences bite in the form of suffering because they're unpleasant, and they become increasingly more unpleasant when dosa arises and pushes them away. And then the other end of the cobra is the pleasant experiences. Those also bite us if we hold on too tightly. Why? Because they are conditioned, and all conditions are impermanent. So that's in essence what we're doing, is trying to prevent the arising of lobha and dosa at the sense doors. Okay? How do we do that? Through the noting practice. Okay? So the purpose of Vipassana practice is to prevent attachment from arising. If a sound arises in my field of experience and I don't note it in time, what happens? My mind picks it up or attaches to it, and whether it's a pleasant sound or an unpleasant sound, wants more lobha, wants less dosa. Both give rise to suffering. Everyone with me still? Yeah. Okay. So the noting practice that you're working with, to elaborate a little bit more upon it, I think I mentioned this on, what day is it today? Sunday? On Friday night when I explained the method. But just to go a little bit deeper, and you may have seen it in your practice, the purpose of the noting is to intercept the conditioned stream of consciousness. What is the conditioned stream of consciousness? It is that exactly. Tanha. The conditioned stream of consciousness is a sense phenomena arises, my mind attaches to it, likes it, wants more, doesn't like it, want less. That's the conditioned stream of consciousness. So what we're attempting to do is intercept that. So as a sense phenomena arises, if we can note it in time, we intercept that stream of consciousness. Before lobha or dosa can arise as a result of tanha, we prevent that from arising, and now we create that space between that I talked about on Friday night, between stimulus and reaction. There's a space. Within that space lies our power to choose our response. Within our response lies our growth and our freedom. We intercept that conditioned stream of consciousness. The noting, as I've mentioned to a few of you in your interview, what happens when we note? If we note in time, in a way, figuratively speaking, it thrusts us into the seat of witness consciousness. It creates a space between, and now I have an opportunity to observe how thought behaves, how sensation in my body behaves, how sound behaves, etc., without my mind conceptualizing and adulterating the experience of that sense phenomena. Does that make sense to everyone?